Hello, everyone. Everybody knows who I am. I'm the grand old dam of Dunrovin, and I have these two wonderful young women who are going to be working with me to put together a real horsemanship program for the web sessions. This is Danielle Lelik.
Yeah.
That's a Hungarian name, and I know we have some Hungarian fans. And Danielle would like to go to Hungary, is that not right?
Yes, of course, in the future, at some point.
At some point. Tell me about your most recent past, Danielle. How did you come to be entrapped at Dunrovin?
My most recent past is for the last probably 12 months. I just was traveling kind of all over Montana and the West Coast. Lived in Missoula before then, and my heart will always be in this valley and with horses, so I think that's what led me to Dunrovin.
And you have a degree in?
Print journalism.
Print journalism.
From the University of Montana.
Yeah, so she's a perfect fit for us because she not only will be operating the camera and setting up the audio, and that's what all this foo-rah-rah was all about. She's learning. This is her first time, and in fact, today is kind of a shakedown day because both Danielle and Laura Sands Vaughn is a horse trainer, and she's new to our valley too. Tell us something about you, Lauren. And the camera's right there, so talk to the camera. That's all part of this. You have to remember to talk to the camera so people can see you.
Yep,
okay?
Getting a feel for it.
Okay.
Well, my husband and I moved to the Bitterroot Valley in August, and so we've been getting our little setup going in Stevensville, and we absolutely love it there. We've been really working to get my horse training program going and just kind of really get a good setup. And so Suzanne contacted me about getting a live horsemanship program going here, and so we're just kind of working together on this and see what we can accomplish.
Yeah, figuring it out. Tell us a little bit about your experience with Western dressage in California. You did that a lot, did you not? Can you tell our viewers what Western dressage means? I mean, first of all, what does dressage mean?
Yes.
And then what's Western about it?
Yes.
Okay?
Well, how much time do we have?
Give a brief little thumbnail sketch.
Yeah.
All right.
So basically, Western dressage is taking the classical principles of dressage, the old style classical principles, and applying that to our Western horses. Because, anymore in your USDF dressage is pretty much dominated by warm bloods. But the training of dressage and the gymnastic movements of dressage are beneficial to all breeds and all disciplines of horses. So the Western Dressage Association's mission is to educate people about that fact and to encourage people to use the classical dressage training for the betterment of their own riding and their Western horses. And so it gives people, again, is the mission of the WDA is to educate, but then it also gives people a community and an association to be involved in and to show if they like to, it's just kind of is organizing it. And for, there's a lot of Western trainers that have been using dressage gymnastics movements for a long time, but they're just kind of organizing it and getting the word out there more. And so I attended the first Train the Trainers that the WDA did in Colorado a couple of years back, and I'm from California. And, like I said, my husband, I moved here in August. And in California for the last couple of years, I've been working very closely with the California chapter of the WDA, trying to, just kind of really help them get started and get some clinics and some shows going and stuff. Last year was their first High Point program, which went awesome. I had myself and a couple of students were involved in that, and myself and my horse took 5th for the state in the open division, and I had 2 students that both did really, really well. I had a reserve champion in the youth and a reserve champion in the amateur, so we were really pleased with our state standings there. And so now I'm working with some gals here in Montana to try to get that same thing going and to really bring the Western Dressage Association to the state of Montana and to educate people about that and give them some show venues and some different things like that.
I'm gonna back up just a little bit here because I know a lot of you are not horse people. And dressage is really, comes from the French word to dance, does it not?
Training, yeah.
To train. And dressage started via the military in Europe, and they trained their horses to do these very complex maneuvers during battle. And they, became more and more and more refined. And the idea is to train your horse to do these very intricate moves. Is that not correct?
Yes, it's very, very much a discipline of precision. And so it's not, a timed event or something like that. It's very much about precision. And the way, if you've ever seen a dressage court, how it's set up, or, maybe some of you, if you're not horse people, you maybe have seen the dressage in the Olympics. A lot of people can relate to that a little bit.
Exactly.
And so, it's very, very much about precision and very advanced maneuvers. And it did start as, kind of a military training, but it very quickly became more of an art amongst the nobility. And so it really was training the horse in a way to make them the best that they can be. And not even necessarily for any specific, for anything specific. Dressage is not a means unto itself. It was a way of working the horse to build up even muscle tone, to build up precision in their training, in their, how they emotionally and mentally connected with their handler. And so that they were, the training was very precise so that the horse was obedient, was supple, and was athletic. They had good muscle tone. And so then that horse, after accomplishing, a couple of years of dressage training, would be physically, mentally, and emotionally equipped to go on and do whatever job was being asked of the horse.
And what I find exciting about all of this Western dressage is, in the horse world, I've always said that people exist in silos. And that is, the people who ride English don't talk to the people who ride Western. And the people who ride quarter horses, they don't talk to the people who ride gaited horses like we do. But the truth of the matter is, we're all horsemen. And I think it's just so wonderful that there's so much crossover now, because we're all learning way more from each other by doing this. And that's one of the hallmarks that we want to bring with this program, is Danielle and Lauren will be bringing in experts, chiropractors, equine dentists, other trainers, and looking at horsemanship from a really broad perspective. And I feel really pleased that these two young women are taking this on. And this is our first session, and this is really a technical session. Danielle has never worked our cameras before and our audio system. Lauren has never been before our cameras before. So today, what we hope to do is just play a little bit. And you're our audience, and you can, chat and tell us what went well and what didn't go well. But Lauren has brought a horse with her today, and one of the things that she's going to be doing is bringing us along with her training on this horse. So at this point, I'm going to ask Danielle to go back to the office and man the camera so that Lauren can get her horse and use her. It's a female, is it not? It's a mare. Yeah. And why don't you get your horse, and then will your horse just come here and I can stand with her and just...
Sure.
All right, then you can explain her history. Wait till Danielle gets there, and then she can follow you a little bit with one of these cameras.
Okay.
This will be a good exercise.
All right.
Okay.
So should I go through that gate there?
You can go right through that gate right there. You're
going
to pass right by the camera. And I'll just wait right here.
Okay.
And maybe I'll do a dance while I'm waiting.
There you go.
Everybody knows that this is a working guest ranch, and people come and go, and life happens. And even though we set aside this time for something, something seems like it always interrupts. Like, here comes the FedEx guy. That you don't get to control life around here. It controls us. And this seems to be very common occurrence. So, Lauren, are you going to want to use the arena or the round pen?
Arena's fine.
Arena. All right, I'll move over to the arena, and Danielle can follow me.
Okay,
Very
whatever's
good.
easier.
Okay. And everybody hears Cola's opinion on everything. He's got to have an opinion. Cola. Hey, you. Little guy, over here. Come and say hello to the people. Huh, come on. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Yeah. Yeah, he's telling the FedEx guy that this is his place. This is his place. Come on, you little runt dog. Little runt dog, huh? All right. Yeah. 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 Yeah, silly little brute. Yeah, silly little brute. Okay. Well, she's very pretty.
Yeah.
She's very pretty. Well, hi. Hi. Are you going to say hello to me? Are you going to say hello? Good girl. Good girl. So tell us about this horse.
Well, this is Oakley.
Oakley.
She's a 3-year-old BLM Mustang mare.
Can you explain what a BLM Mustang is?
Absolutely.
All right.
The BLM stands for Bureau of Land Management. And so the Mustangs that are on public BLM land, oftentimes get rounded up and adopted out. And so she was one of those. She's in training with me. So I don't know the entirety of her backstory. I believe she was adopted out from the BLM as a yearling. And so she's not going to have, generally speaking, the horses that are adopted out as yearlings are not going to have quite that same Mustang mentality that a horse that lived in the wild until they were 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years old and then rounded up are. But she definitely does still have a lot of Mustang traits. And so, we're just kind of working through those with her. She was started by another trainer in California. She's here for the summer. And she was started last fall. And they kind of had some physical issues with her that they had to work through. She was having trouble with her knees. And so...
And do you think that was a nutritional issue? Was that because of bad nutrition during her first year? Or what was
it just is really hard to say. It could have been, that certainly could have had something to do with it. It could have been that she just wasn't really ready to be started at that point. She would have been not quite 3, so that was a little bit young, in my opinion. And so, and some horses are just genetically have some weaknesses already. And so she's really has been quite good on the ground, but under saddle, she does get nervous about the rider being up on top of her and up above her and kind of seeing you in the corner of her eye like that. And so we've been having to kind of work through her nervousness. And so what I would like to do with her today, my plan, is because this is the first time that I've trailered her out somewhere new.
All right.
And to work with her. So I'm not going to ride her today.
No.
I want to do some groundwork with her and just kind of show you guys how some of the things that I like to do with a horse when I'm taking them out, because I know that a lot of people struggle with their horse can be really, really good at home.
Yes.
And then they try to go to a show or they try to go to a clinic and everything just completely falls apart. And so, I want to kind of show you some things you can do from the moment that you step your horse out of the trailer. Granted, she's already been tied up there for a few minutes while we were doing our introduction. But, from the time that you're, really start with your horse, when you go somewhere new, and they may be really hot and looking around, and she's actually is doing pretty good for as young as she is, and the fact that she can be kind of spooky. So she's doing a little bit better than I expected her to.
Well, and the dogs have been around.
But, still, we're going to maybe start to put a little bit of pressure on her and see how she reacts and see how well she's paying attention to me in a new place. Now, we are at a benefit because there's not a whole lot going on. Which is, I want to make a point that when you are working with a young horse or a green horse or a horse that even just hasn't been out that much, if you've never trailered them out or if you've never had a good experience trailering them out, then you probably don't want to go to a big show. You want to take them out a couple of times, take them somewhere, even if you have to rent an arena somewhere else or whatever you have to do, go to a friend's house. Just figure something out that you can take your horse somewhere new and work with them without a whole lot of chaos going on and without 50 other new horses running around. And, generally when a person goes to a show or goes to a clinic, they get very nervous themselves and tend to have a lot of tension themselves. And then the horse picks up on that, and it just adds even more pressure onto the horse. And so I'm going to give you guys some stuff that I like to do when I take a horse somewhere new. And like I talked about, it's good to take him somewhere new that's quiet a couple of times before you take him to something chaotic.
Okay, I'm going to exit.
Okay.
All right. And I just want to say one other thing. Mustangs are really, they are the offspring of feral horses that were brought over early in America's history. But they've also mixed with other horses that have been domesticated and released.
Yeah.
So, and there are different strains of them.
Yeah, with your BLM Mustangs, you have a lot of differences in there. Some of them are more like thoroughbred built. Some of them, a lot of them, have a lot of Iberian horse influence, where they're very much like an Andalusian. Yeah. I've seen a BLM Mustang that was gated. So who knows how that got in there?
Yeah.
But
they're kind of a big mixture.
But you can really tell in the different herds, what the genetics are. Now I would say even though she's small, but she's got some feathering, and in the way that she moves and in kind of the way she's built, I would say that she has some draft in her. Even though she's not tall, but she definitely gets some feathers. She's stocky, and the way that she moves, she reminds me oftentimes of almost a little tiny Clydesdale.
And maybe Danielle can show the feathers on her feet. What you mean by feathers?
Oh, yes. The feathers are extra hair, more than usual, that grows around the fetlock of the horse, down here around their hoof. Yeah. Now, a horse like Gypsy Vanner is going to have some major the feathers are just going to cover that hoof completely.
Yeah,
and so she doesn't have nearly that much, but hers are thicker and a bit longer than what you would normally see in like a quarter horse. And so, that's kind of a characteristic oftentimes that comes through genetically with the drafts.
Okay, I'm going to exit, and we're all going to watch you. Thank you, Lauren.
All right.
All right.
So, as I said, she is doing a little bit better than I expected. She's staying pretty calm. She's gone away from her herd mates. I'm just going to run over here. I don't know if the camera's going to reach me over here, but I'm going to grab some props real quick. So, the most important lesson in my mind for when you take a horse out somewhere new, is that horse paying attention to me. Okay, that's the most important part, because that's when you start to run into issues, is when they're just looking everywhere else. They want to go talk to that horse over there. This horse ran by and they want to follow that one, or there's a spooky canopy or whatever, and they're just really distracted. And when a horse gets distracted, they tend to be very jittery. Maybe they'll jig. They'll not want to stand still. They'll want to go faster than what you're asking them to. Now, you can see what she's doing. Her defense mechanism a little bit, which is very common amongst younger horses, is she's wanting to crowd me. And a lot of people get really upset at that horses, that she's disrespecting me, and they want to chase the horse off. And if you noticed, while we were talking, I held my boundary. I'm not going to move away from her. I'm going to stand here, and I'm going to hold my boundary, and if she's too close to me that it makes me uncomfortable, I'm going to push her off. But I'm not going to get after her too aggressively, because the only reason she's doing that is because I'm her comfort zone. And I don't want to discourage her from looking to me as her comfort zone. I do want to discourage her from being pushy. I don't want her to step on me. But there's a distinction there. And a lot of times, like I said, people get really upset with their horses. And you have to not take it so personally. It just is, like I said, she's looking to me as her comfort zone. It's like a toddler. When the toddler gets scared, they come over, Mommy, hold me. They want you to pick them up, and they want you to hold them. And so that's all that she's doing when she's crowding me. She's going, stay with me, be close to me. I'm not sure what's going on, comfort me. And so she's looking to me as her leader, and she's looking at me for comfort. But it's very, very easy for a horse to start to take advantage of you, because they're looking to you to be that strong leader. But if you don't stand strong, then they're going to go, well, you're not the strong leader. I got to do my own thing, or I got to go look for another leader. Okay? So in order for me to be the leader, I'm not going to chase her off. I'm going to allow her to be close to me, and I'm going to allow her to find comfort being in my space, and I'm going to give her guidance. But I'm going to be a strong leader. I'm not going to let her push me. I'm not going to let her step on me, and I'm not going to let her crowd me too much. Okay? So I'm going to determine where that boundary is. So right here where she's kind of wanting to touch me, I'll just push her away. I'll say, no, I'm standing here. And not be real aggressive about it, but just be firm. And say, no, I'm standing here. You're not going to step on me. You're not going to move me. And so the next thing is going to be if she can stand still. And you can tell she's a little bit jittery. She's not really bad. I've seen a lot worse. She's not really bad. But she's a bit jittery. She's wanting to look around and be a little bit jittery. So we're going to do an exercise. She's done this once before at her home ranch, so it's not something that's totally new to her. But it's going to have more pressure on because we're in a new environment. And so this is what I call the hula hoop. Now, the hula hoop is symbolic, okay? It's not about the hoop. It's symbolic of a boundary, okay? So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask her to put her front feet in that hula hoop. I'm going to walk her up to it. Some horses, you have an issue where they're afraid of the hoop itself, that's colorful and it's, there and it's touching me. And so sometimes they get a little bit nervous about that. And so what we're going to do with her, she wasn't really afraid of the hoop itself. It was more about the boundary. It was more about standing still in this space and not being able to move out of it. So if you have in a different situation with a different horse that might be afraid of the hoop, then you would approach this differently. But with her, she's not scared of the hoop. She'll sniff it and play with it and move it around. That doesn't bother her. But with her, it's going to be about that boundary and about staying still and having that self-control. And this is what it really comes down to, is does my horse have the self-control to stand still when I ask them to? Then you progress. Does my horse have the self-control to walk and only walk when I ask them to? Does my horse have the self-control to trot and only trot? Not to take off running and bucking, but to only trot when I ask her to. And so you're going to see this progress, but we're going to start with standing still. So I'm going to walk her front feet into the hula hoop. And it doesn't have to be a hoop. I like to use a hoop, but you can make a box out of wood. You can do this. Again, the hoop is just symbolic. You don't have to have something on the ground, but it helps. It helps you keep your focus, and it helps your horse have a visual for that boundary. So I want her to stand still with her feet in that hula hoop, and ideally I should be able to move around her, just like if I was at a show and I wanted to tie her up and be able to groom her and tack her up. So I should be able to move around her with her standing still in this hoop. But I'm going to stay here and support her for a moment, and when she can stand still with my support, then I'll see if I can start to back up a little bit. So I just want her to stand, and my cue is I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to tell her stand. And then I'm going to start to just kind of walk over here to her side. If she moves, any step she takes, I correct her. So she took a step forward, I ask her to take a step back. I'm going to get her squared up a little bit in the center. Good girl. Good. So I get her settled here, and then I'll go back to what I was doing. And so let's just pretend that I'm at a show and I want to get my horse ready, and I'm brushing her and I'm getting her all groomed up. Good girl. So, and it's really difficult, especially if you've already got a little bit of some show nerves going on. It's really difficult if you've got a horse that you're trying to tack up and you're trying to groom and you've got a class in a couple minutes and your horse is just all over the place. They just won't stand still. You're having trouble putting the saddle on because they're moving around. Good girl. Good. And she's doing quite well. If I remember correctly, the first time I did this lesson with her last week, it was about a good 20 minutes before she was standing still solidly. Stand. But she seems to have retained it pretty well, even though we're in a new place. Good girl. And the thing is that a lot of people don't realize is that horses, they're like children. They find comfort in boundaries. Your boundaries have to be fair, and they have to be unchanging. Okay? And they find comfort in that. And so if you allow them too much leniency and you allow them to get into that state of panic where they're moving all over the place, they're not in a good state of mind to go walk into a clinic or a show or go on a trail ride or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so when you bring your horse back to this state of relaxation, some peace, some mental clarity, they find comfort in that. And you may have to be firm sometimes and say, no, you're not walking out of that hula hoop. You're standing there. I'm not going to allow you to walk away. And so she's being really good. But a lot of times, you have horses that they're gone. They don't care what you're doing. They want to go up over there. And so when you really, you're a little bit firm and you bring them back to this place of, no, this is your boundary. You're staying here and you're not moving. They do find comfort in that. And they'll look to you and they'll trust you more because you're giving them that security that they're looking for. Good girl. Good. So I'm pretty pleased with her. She's standing still very well, even though she's still moving a little bit, but that's to be expected. She's doing better than I thought she would. Good girl. Being in a new place at all. Good. So we're just going to let her have just a minute. When she'll stand still, I'll make her settle for a minute. And if she comes out, we'll just walk her back in. Good. So I'm just going to see if she'll stand for a minute. I'm just asking her to take a little bit of a step back. Good girl. Good. Stand. Stand. No, she came out a little bit too much. So now I'm going to ask her back in. Good girl. Stand. Stand. Good girl. Good girl. Stand. And she's not being really fidgety, but there's just that little bit of movement still. Stand. Stand. But you can see how having the hula hoop or making a little box with some 2x4s or, having that visual barrier, you can see how that comes in handy. Because I can guarantee you, if we had not had this visual barrier, then we would have been probably, at least halfway down the arena. Because there's that little bit of fidget, stop. Little bit of fidget over here, stop. A little bit of fidget, and then maybe they stand for a few minutes, and then a little bit of fidget over here, and you'll end up all over the place. And so this is really making you and your horse concentrate on staying in a specific place. And so that visual barrier, whatever it is, really helps. Stand. You haven't heard a donkey before, have you? Probably not. So even though she's distracted, she's standing in the hula hoop like I want her to. And she's allowed to look as long as she stays standing where I want her to. Stand. And this is just as much as an exercise of patience for her, because being 3, and age isn't always a determining factor, because sometimes you have, horses in their teens that never learn to be patient. But being a 3-year-old, she's like a preteen. So she's not going to have the natural patience. But this is the time when she needs to be learning it. Because like I said, there's horses that are much older that never learned to be patient. And it's easier to teach them early in life than later when they're set in their ways. Good girl. Stand. Good girl. So I'm pretty happy with that for where she's at. So I'm going to go ahead and walk her out of it. And then we're going to go over here and pick up our lunge line. And I'm going to put her on the line, and we're going to work on, just like I talked about, now that I've got her standing, now we're going to see, okay, can you walk and only walk? Can you trot and only trot? And not let your horse run all over you. So a lot of times you see horses get sent out, whether it's in the round pen or a lunge line, and that horse just takes off doing whatever they want to do, and they don't have any gait control. And so what I like to have with my horses is a very set level of gait control, where in any situation, if I ask my horse to walk, they should only stay walking and nothing else, and that should be the same with your trot and your lope. Good girl. And this is something she knows, but again, this is her first time in a new situation. So we're testing the waters of how is she going to handle the pressure and the distraction of being in a new situation. So, and there is a couple of things, since she's being good real quick, that I'm going to point out about my lunging. There's a lot of different styles of lunging. Every trainer does it differently. And so I like to keep my whip up towards my horse, because I like it to be available for immediate corrections. And the whip is not a means of intimidation. It's not a means of punishment. It's a means of communication. So when you're riding, you have your rein and your leg and your seat to communicate with the horse. When you're lunging, you have your line and you have your whip to communicate with your horse. And your line should be basically take the place of what the reins do when you're riding, and your whip takes the place of what your leg is. And so that's oftentimes something that gets missed out on, is that it's not about punishment or intimidation, it's about communication. So right there, when she makes the circle smaller than I want her to, I can put it up just like if I was riding, I'd put my leg on her a little and say, nah, move over a little bit. And so I can put the whip up a little bit and communicate to her that I want her to move out. Good girl. Good. The other thing, with my lunging, I don't like to stand still. I like to be moving with the horse. Not a lot, but I like that to be a cue to my horse. If I stop, my horse should stop. And that's my rule if I'm leading, lunging, round pinning, riding. If I stop and go still, my horse should stop and go, okay, what are we doing? And so I don't like to stand in one spot. I like to stay in one circle. I don't like to be all over the arena. I stay in one circle right here, but I'm communicating in my own movement. I'm communicating to my horse that we're moving. So she's doing great with the walk, but let's put a little bit more pressure on her and do some transitions. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to go up into the trot, and I only want to trot. If she runs off into a lope, or even if she gets really fast in her trot where she's not paying attention to me, then what I'm going to do is just pull her around and reel her in. Good girl. And you can see she's a little bit distracted, but as long as she keeps her trot and keeps in the circle, she's not pulling on me. She does actually come in a little bit too close on that side, but she's not pulling on me, and she's keeping her gait. Good. So now I'm going to go ahead and see how her transition is and see just how well she's paying attention. So for my downward transitions, I take a deep breath, I relax. Oh, what a good girl. And if my horse doesn't immediately go off of my physical cue of sitting back and relaxing and slowing down, then I'll use a verbal cue, which would be walk. And it's not so much the word as it is the tone in your voice. So when I ask for a downward transition, it's always walk or trot, and it's very specific tone. So it's not so much that the horses understand a word, but they understand the tone and the meaning in your voice and what you're trying to say. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple transitions back and forth and just see how well she's paying attention. Good girl. And walk. Good. Excellent job. I'm very, very pleased with her. And walk. Good. Good. Okay, so let's go ahead and change directions, because you're oftentimes going to have something different on both sides. So what I do for changing directions, I'm going to back up away from her. I'm going to put my whip out to what is my left, and then I want her to turn in towards me. Good girl. Well done. And I like that she stayed at the walk. Okay, so if she was to have picked up into a trot or wanted to run through that turn, then I would have reeled her in with my line and got her attention again and started over and done another change. So right there where she wants to come in a little too close, I lift my hands and I just lift my whip up just like what my leg would be if I was riding, and I ask her to move out onto a larger circle. But you see how the whip is not about intimidating her to go forward, because I can communicate with her with the whip. I can ask her to move over, and I can touch her with it and ask her to move over without her running off. Okay, she kept the walk. So now we'll go ahead and ask for a trot. Good girl. And walk. So she's not coming down, so I'll just reel her in with my line and go, hey, you missed something. And then we'll do it again and see if we get a little bit better response. Good. And walk. Much better. Good girl. But I want her to stay out on that circle. Whenever she comes in too close to me, I'm going to move her out. Good girl. And walk. Perfect. Great job. Okay, so let's bump it up a notch, and I'm going to go ahead and ask her to lope, and there's the possibility that she'll lope off really calmly and come back into a nice calm trot, which is what we're hoping for. There's also the possibility that once I ask her to lope, she goes, oh, we're running, and she's going to want to run around, and she's not going to want to come down and pay attention to me. So we're going to test it out. And I do give them a bigger circle. She shouldn't be loping in that small of a circle at this age or at this level of her training. So I'm going to kind of let some line out, but I want her to take it all up. So see how if I drop it too quickly, then it drags on the ground. So I've got to use that communication with my whip to move her out onto the bigger circle. Good girl. And same thing though, she should stay loping as long as I ask her to lope. So just as much as I don't want them to come up before I ask them to, I also don't want them to transition down before I ask them to. And trot. Perfect. What a good girl. And trot. Great job. Good girl. So I love how she's coming into a really relaxed trot. She's still looking around, of course, but she's not running off, and I'm not having to use my line to back up my downward transition. When I ask her to come down from the lope, she's listening to my body and my voice cues, and she's coming down for me. Good girl. Trot. Good girl. And you notice she's a little bit wanting to spook in that corner and come in close to me. So I'm just going to keep working her through it and ask her that she needs to be paying a little bit more attention to me and not worry about that stuff. It's not about what's going on out there. That's outside the arena. That's got nothing to do with us, and we're not going to worry about it. Little bit better. She didn't come in quite so much, but she still is turning her head. Little bit better. Good girl. Now, whenever they drop their head like that, they're starting to relax. Good girl. Little bit better. Okay, I'm going to ask her to come down. Perfect. Good girl. And I'm going to have her walk through that corner. And if she walks through decently, then we'll go ahead and change directions. Good. Good. So again, I back up. I've got my whip out to my right. Good. She had to think about that one for a second, but she made the right decision. So we haven't loped her on this side yet, so we're going to bring her up into a trot first. Good girl. Good. A little bit better. Good. Trot. Good girl. And trot. Good girl. Good, and she came down into a nice, relaxed working jog. Good girl. And walk. Good. I still want her to stay out on a decent circle, though. I don't want her coming into me so much just because she's slowing down. Good girl. Good. So now let's go ahead and test out our stop. Ooh. 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 Good. So you can kind of see my body cue. I come to a very definite stop, and I put my whip kind of behind me, and I put my hand that's holding the whip up, and I use the verbal cue, whoa, and I want my horse to stop right there. I don't like the horse to run in towards me. I like him to stop. So that was not bad, but it could have been better. So let's send her out and ask again. And ooh, much better that time. Good girl. Much better. Yes, great job. So I'm really pleased with her. I was kind of hoping that she wouldn't do quite so well, to be honest with you, because I wanted to show you some ways to correct a horse. But I'm very pleased with her, and I think you guys got a really good idea of some of the boundaries that I set up when we take a horse to a new place and I want to keep their attention on me. So, my command team, how are we doing on questions, time? Do you want me to throw something else in there? Or
I can ask people on chat if they... Can you hear me first?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
I can ask some people on chat if they have any questions and then relay them to you in just a second. And then once we're done with that, I will come out with you and we'll say goodnight to everybody.
Okay, sounds good.
You guys look beautiful out there.
Thank you.
They must be thinking up some good questions. All of what they're saying is that you guys are so sweet.
Thank you.
I'll just give it a couple more seconds and then I'll come out there.
Okay, no worries. We're working on her standing again. Stand. Stand. Good. Hoop. Hoop. Stand. Stand. I know, it's so tough.
Alright, I'm coming out.
Okay, cool. Stand. Good girl.
All right, Danielle here. I am just going to go out and say goodnight to Lauren and Oakley. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I think they can hear me. That was wonderful.
Good.
She did it like a pro, huh?
I know, she was so good.
And it is
especially
Oakley,
for
right?
her- yeah, Oakley, yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, especially for her first time out, because she can be spooky.
Yeah.
And so I did expect her to be a little bit more distracted than she was and to be a
Yeah.
little bit spooky, so I'm really proud of her.
You
But
did
part of that
great.
is like what we talked about in the beginning, how it's quiet here.
Yeah.
So it's really good for her to get out a couple of times somewhere that's quiet.
Definitely.
And get used to being, you know, going in the trailer, going somewhere new,
Yep.
and then having to work.
Yeah.
And so then when she gets, you know, obviously she was great today, but
Oh,
when
yeah.
she gets used to that, then it'll be easier to trailer out
Move her up
somewhere.
levels,
Yeah,
yep.
to take her somewhere a little bit more
Yeah.
chaotic and expect that same
so
level of
sweet.
behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. We will be back next week at 6 o'clock, and hopefully we'll have Nevaeh with us, and Lauren can teach Nevaeh some riding techniques.
Yeah.
So until then, have a great week,
Yep.
weekend and week. And thank you to Lauren and Oakley.
Thank you.
Beautiful. All right.